welcome to the LarpHouse. So this is an episode about character bleed. It has been a long time coming, and I have taken my time with this because I really wanted to do the research, and I wanted to go to a couple more Nordic games. I just really wanted this to be a good, solid video for you guys. Character bleed is essentially when bits of your character bleed over into your real life, or vice versa. So whether this is new to you, or whether you have experienced character bleed many times before and would like maybe some tips on how to manage it safely and responsibly, stay tuned. And here I am bringing her back, my girl Tara Myers at the Center for EBT Treatment in Santa Ana, California. Character bleed, I think, is an under-discussed topic, especially in American LARP. And I think that is in part due to the stigma of character bleed meaning that you are too invested in your game and all of that nonsense. Some people think that character bleed means that you think that you are your character, and I'm just going to stop you right there. That is not the case. No. There was a bit of a phenomenon in the 80s that we call the Satanic Panic, where that stigma became popular. People thought that LARPing was a cult, and that they were doing all of these sacrifices and things because they thought they were their characters, and LARP took over their pure minds and souls, corrupting the good youth. This is not a thing, but the stigma stuck, and it has been very slowly eroding over time. So I'm going to say this once. LARPers never forget what is real. And don't get me wrong, over-involvement in any hobby is absolutely possible, and LARP is no exception. But character bleed is not inherently indicative of being over-involved. Bleed can happen for so many reasons, and most of those reasons are completely out of the player's control. Like Claus, Raasted, the project coordinator for one of the most popular LARPing companies in the world, says,
because emotions are real even when the stories are fake.
And that is what we are talking about here.
For LARPing, when you act a certain way, you start to feel that way.
Like the wise writers over at nordiclarp.org say, denying that participants can become personally impacted by game events erases the experience of many players and silences their ability to ask for help. So don't be that guy. Don't make people feel bad about feeling their feelings. We'll find you. I will come for you in the night. Now, there are a great many benefits and therapeutic aspects to LARP as well. I would absolutely say that the positive effects far outweigh the negative. So much. LARP has helped people cultivate better public speaking skills, more overall self-confidence, better teamwork and leadership skills, easing of symptoms of multiple mental illnesses, including but not limited to anxiety, depression, addiction, and PTSD.
DBT has been adapted for people with co-occurring substance use disorders. DBT acknowledges that individuals, they live these really, some of them pretty exciting, they're on the, streets, dangerous, meeting drug dealers, and then they go to working at Ralph's. Life is not fun anymore. Finding alternate rebellion, finding ways to express that part of their, personality. Risky things like mountain climbing, skydiving. Other people, it's more about not conforming to society, and DBT totally supports that. LARPing actually would be a way that, a community where people can kind of not have to conform.
I talk about the benefits that I have personally experienced here in this video, how LARP helped cure my anxiety. If you just want an idea of how LARPing and character bleed has helped me. Now we are going to move on to types of bleed. Get ready for a fun list, you guys. So, bleed in and bleed out are the two sort of, everything falls into one of those two. There is bleed in, which is when the player affects the character, when I bring my real world views or experiences into my character, and bleed out is the opposite, when traits and emotions of your character carry over into your real life. Now for the varied types of bleed that can go into either of those categories. These are just all the types of bleed that I have found defined in various articles and things on the internet. Ego bleed. This is when elements or mannerisms of the player's personality bleed over into the characters, or vice versa. If you become more confident because your character is very outgoing, that is ego bleed. Even something as simple as starting to stand in a different posture because your character does. I started to stand in the Peter Pan stance after I played Petra for so long, and now I have no shame. Emotional release. This is when you and your character are in sync during an intense moment, be it joy, grief, love, anger, fear, whatever. It's basically when you get the opportunity in character to express an emotion that you did not get an opportunity to express in your real life, and therefore, you end up feeling better afterwards. Like sometimes how after you feel better after a good cry, even if the cry was just because you ran out of pizza, or maybe feeling better after a good session of screaming into the void. Perspective bleed. This usually means that you gain empathy or at least a better understanding of a perspective that is far different from your own life experience because you have played it as a LARP character and internalized some part of it. Interpersonal bleed. This is what I have just started calling this type of bleed because it's my absolute favorite. It is when a relationship that you have with a person in character bleeds over and informs a relationship that you have out of character. This is the bleed that is responsible for so many of the wonderful, fantastic friendships that form in the LARP community, and it's my favorite thing on the planet. On the planet. I just got like a hot flash talking about how much I love friendship. Oh my god. I am a My Little Pony. Whew. For example, my College of Wizardry character, Willow, has a best friend. His in-character name is Advent Adams, and now me and that guy are pretty close buddies. He is the Ron Swanson to my Leslie Knope now, and I thank Character Bleed for starting this. Experience bleed. When an experience, a single experience that you have had informs your character or your role-playing, or vice versa. If you are doing something in real life and you think, oh yeah, we handled this really well in a LARP that I played, and then you apply that, that's experience bleed. Emancipatory bleed. This term was coined by one LARP angel, Jonea Kemper, and she uses it to describe the process of purposefully steering your character bleed in a direction that eases the symptoms of cultural and personal oppression and trauma. Specifically for people of color. And if you want to know more about that, you should check out her work because it's very important work that she does. It's very important work. I don't want to hear any of you complaining about one type of character bleed that's meant for people of color. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I live on the internet. I hear it enough. Calm down. Put down the keyboard bongos. And now we are going to move on to common causes of character bleed. And this list may have some things on it that surprise you. Number 1 is going to be playing a character very close to home. This may seem obvious, because it's a bit obvious. Playing a person or a character that is very close to your personal experiences will obviously increase bleed because you will be able to empathize with them more. 2, exhaustion, hunger, sleep deprivation, bad weather. Really any sort of physical distress will weaken your brain's ability to be able to discern fake emotions from real ones. Catharsis, intense emotional situations in character. If your character experiences something very deeply and you are sort of in sync in that moment, it floods your brain with emotions and it doesn't really know what to do, and it internalizes a lot more of them than maybe it would on a normal time. 4, creating a habit. The repetition of a situation or mannerism results in you becoming accustomed to it. Obviously, that seems obvious. When you are repeatedly exposed to a situation that you find uncomfortable and then you build up a tolerance for it, that can be referred to as exposure therapy. Exposure therapy can provide increased distress tolerance and can be key in managing symptoms of illnesses like anxiety, depression, and PTSD. It certainly has been for me.
Well, I am a now board-certified DBT therapist. It's a treatment for personality disorder initially, but now it's found effective for people. I regularly see people who meet criteria for like 5 different diagnoses.
The trick with that is baby steps.
I always tell people, if you have snake phobia, you're eventually gonna, I have no idea why someone would want to address that personally, but they're gonna have to start really gradually, like looking at pictures of snakes, looking at snakes through a window, petting a snake, but if I threw a snake on their lap coming into a therapy session, I would traumatize them. Yeah. And they would now be afraid of snakes and therapists.
Baby steps. Please do that. Be safe. Emotional safety is just safety. And then there's the more traditional basic habit building, such as having a very confident character, and in character you don't let people interrupt or talk down to you, and so you bring that over into your real life. That is a godsend. And then number 5, sudden or unexpected or totally surprise, intense emotional situations. It really is the surprise element of this that causes a lot of vulnerability to character bleed. If you are totally unprepared for something, you will likely experience more bleed than if you would had you time to batten down the hatches. Which brings me to the list of management strategies. 1. Here is my number 1 golden rule. The golden roleplay rule of the LarpHouse. Write it down. Get it tattooed. Whatever you need to do. If you're a GM, listen. If you're a player, listen. If you're an NPC, listen. And the rule is, check it before you wreck it. If you're a GM, organizer, storyteller, whatever you call yourself, if you are the LARP boss for your group, ask your players if they are the type of player that needs to be warned before certain content involving their characters. It is not hard. I promise it will not hurt your game, and everyone will be able to manage themselves safely and happily on their journey across the sea of LARP. Players, make it known about yourself if you are the type of person that needs to be warned before certain things involve your character. Make the job easier for those around you to help you manage yourself in a safe way. You know, we want a smooth sail across the sea of LARP. Tell the world there's no shame. We should all understand that when people want these sorts of warnings, it is because they are trying to manage themselves responsibly and still participate in the game. Because that's what's happening. We all understand that, right? Good. Moving on. Many players love to be surprised with the dramatic, theatrical, intense storylines. My long-lost lover that I thought was dead returned to us for a single night before she went into the nether realms with a demon to save us from a deal that we made when we were obliterated at the tavern. There is nothing wrong with that. At all. Even I like to play that way for certain characters or certain games. I swing both ways. I do, though. But some players do not like to be surprised with some things, and that is perfectly valid. It needs to be respected, because a surprise that you don't want is not a surprise at all. It's an ambush. If you have to ask permission before you touch somebody's physical guts, which you should, then you should also probably ask permission before grabbing their heart guts. This also goes for in-character romance. Check it before you wreck it. The more you communicate, the better. Even if you have a real-life partner and you want to have your characters involved with other people, that's fine. You may even develop crushes on the other people. As long as all boundaries are respected, as long as all communication is open, crushes are perfectly healthy. You're gonna be okay. Just check it before you wreck it. And of course, this varies from player to player, character to character, game to game, and from game culture to game culture. But I think that for players who need it, it is absolutely necessary for organizers and the other players to be accommodating and let them know what they are getting into, and to listen to them when they say what is and isn't okay for them personally. Trust the player to know what will work for them and what won't. This is also extremely important for players who are trying to manage symptoms of mental illness responsibly. Whether they are consciously using LARP for therapy or not, it can still affect them in a way that is different for someone without mental illness. Listen to them. That's the end of my check it before you wreck it rant, sorry. And that was just number 1, don't worry, they're not all that long. Number 2 is in-game signaling. This is a hand signal that in my home community means, are you okay? And if the person does the hand signal back, that means that they are okay. This is a really handy tool for checking in with someone without stopping the scene. It's a nice and discreet way to make sure that nobody is actively dying. Number 3, have someone who is mental health savvy, preferably certified, on your staff. Have them be available to talk to players who are overwhelmed, who need some time out of character to process, or who just need a little bit of recharge. You can also have in-game counselors and confidants to sit and talk about the character issues in character, which is also incredibly helpful because sometimes if you just stop a scene and you leave and all of the characters' issues are still unresolved, it's hard to resolve your own feelings about it. But even if you have someone set aside specifically for people to go to that just gives them a blanket and some tea and a promise to listen, sometimes that's enough. Number 4, debriefing. This means after parties. Yay, fun part. There's a purpose behind the after game parties and going out to eat with everybody. Providing an out of character space after game where people can talk and share their war stories and their battle scars and how cool everyone else was in specific moments. It's a really handy tool to sort of transition back into reality. Helps diffuse bad character bleed and reinforce that sort of emotional safety that the community is built on. Number 5, rituals, not blood magic. Necessarily. As in repeated activities that you do after every game that signal to yourself that you are transitioning back into the real world. I used to like to take very long baths after weekend-long games to sort of wash off both the physical and the emotional dirt. And after a while, your brain sort of learns that, oh, when Cheyenne takes a very, very long bath, that means that she's not a homeless, feral, magical girl in a suit of plate armor anymore. She is the Chaos Fairy again. That sounds... I don't live a normal life. Number 6. This one might, ruffle some feathers here, but we're gonna dive into it anyway. I'm gonna retconning and or steering. Retconning and steering, they're different things. Ret-Con stands for Retroactive Continuity, and it is a term basically used to mean rewriting an aspect of the story after it has already been played out in a game. Steering means purposefully directing your game towards or away from certain types of roleplay or topics, basically having a little bit of control over your experience there, as opposed to just letting the wind take you. Retconning and steering can actually be very valuable tools because there will always be real-life things that you have to take into account in a game in order to allow some people to play. And I'm not saying, rewrite everything, Barbara's had a bad day. That's not what I'm saying. No, this is more for emergency situations when somebody is affected out of game severely and they need a little community help here. I know a lot of staff members, especially in very mechanics-based games, really hate retconning, but please, just bear with me. If someone's mental health is suffering, attend to them. The players are more important than the game. And if I hear a single person say, oh, they're just too invested in the game, I want you to go back to the beginning of this video and let me know where I lost you. This has actually happened to me once upon a time. My character Petra, her wife, you guys have met her, Aethera, the perfect little baby elf. Her character surprise retired. The story was that Aethera had sacrificed herself to save the world from a demon who was taking over everything, and her soul had to be shattered into a million pieces and gone forever. And so it's just like, wow, not only did she die, but in the world full of ghosts and afterlives, I don't even have that little safety net. Nope, nothing. Nobody checked it before they wrecked it, and boy did it get rickety wrecked. No fault of anybody's really. It was just a lot of misunderstanding. I had relapses with death anxiety and generalized anxiety, especially considering, if you watch the video, Petra as a character helped me a lot with specifically death anxiety, and then to have her spouse die in such a very permanent way, it was not very chill. I was not very chill about it. Was not very chill.
We were in that for like a couple years.
Mm-hmm. I started DK when I was 18, and as of when we're filming this in 2017, I'm 21. That's 3 years of my life put into this character, and a good, year and a half, 2 years in a relationship with Petra. So it was definitely a big thing, and it affected me a lot more than I thought it was gonna.
Yeah.
Bleed, y'all! Woo!
Character bleed.
A lot of it.
But what they did is they sort of turned Petra into a magical Dying Kingdoms LARP version of a gem fusion from Steven Universe. They made it so a little piece of the Aethera soul stuck into Petra and she became like a permanent fusion that could never unfuse. And then she ended up retiring as the game's avatar Fae of reincarnation. You can read the epilogue that I wrote for Petra's story. I will link to it up here. But it actually ended up being something really lovely, something positive that I could really sink my teeth into, and the whole LARP community they really swooped in and saved the day with that one. So that's actually where the check it before you wreck it rule came from. But it turned out great because my game staff was willing to rewrite the story and the rules just a little bit to help me cope. Trust your players when they say they need something, and you will get that trust back, and it'll just be magical friendship magic for everyone. A friendly neighborhood LARP academic, I think his name is Rhidian Barrett, I think that's how you say his name, says, "What has been done for you in your example is, and really should be seen as, the same as finding an in-character reason for a person to be able to attend in a wheelchair, because, mental illness awareness. Thanks, buddy." And as Johanna Koljonen, I don't know, I'm going to link to her. I am worse at pronouncing names than Hagrid. But as she says in her talk, Safety in LARP, your job is to make the players be safe and feel safe to explore and enjoy your game. If a player doesn't feel out of game, like they are emotionally safe, they're not going to be as free to explore the wonderful worlds you have created, so free them. So staff, don't be afraid to retcon and accommodate your players a little bit. And players, don't be afraid to talk to your staff members if you are having a time. Bleed is normal, there is nothing wrong with you, and if you are in a healthy LARP community, your friends will rush to your rescue. Reach out, communicate, don't be an emotional potato, just light the beacons! Number 7 is personal behavioral coping mechanisms. These are things that you can do on your own to alleviate symptoms of depression and anxiety, should you have them, and I have my girl Tara Myers here backing me up on this.
Marsha Linehan, who created dialectical behavior therapy, was actually pretty ahead of the game with that, and she's made it much more behavioral. She's not saying that most people have to meditate. They don't have to even meditate at all. It's just learning to be present. It is something that it's a muscle. When you're walking your dog, just walk your dog. That's practicing mindfulness. Like, don't think about what you have to do afterwards. Just bring your brain back as many times as you need to. So noticing, like, I'm ruminating, if you have a mindfulness, you're more likely to notice that. Well, usually it doesn't resolve itself. It's something kind of shifts you out of it. So you're just learning how to shift yourself out of it.
These types of treatments are evidence-based, which means that they are scientifically, biologically shown to get results. Things like, a thing that worked for me when I had very bad anxiety, is to hold an ice cube in my hand when I was feeling very high panic levels.
Sometimes it's just this sensation that's very distracting of holding ice, but actually holding your breath in a bowl of ice water for about 30 seconds. If you need to take a breath, but actually engages your parasympathetic nervous system and will decrease arousal quickly. I saw somebody in training wearing a pulse monitor doing burpees, and her heart, I think it was a 150, 160, and in 30 seconds it went back down to 70. So if you have a heart condition, see your doctor first.
Number 8, make sure your PCs are fed, watered, and give them some time to sleep. If you're a hardcore survival game and you actually strive for harsh physical conditions, then you should know that your game is perfectly engineered to create a lot of character bleed, and you should probably pay extra attention to the other steps and bits of this video, because if you just engineer a whole lot of character bleed but then don't manage it, it's going to be sort of like throwing a grenade full of coleslaw. Just messy. And no matter how hardcore your game is, real life safety comes first. You should have food and water available, especially water. Even if you are not thirsty, drink water. If you're tired, drink water. If you're cranky, drink water. Do you understand what I am saying? Hail hydrate! And plan for a day of rest and relaxation after a LARP. The LARP hangover is very real, whether you drink or not. We are finally towards the end of the meaty content of this video, which, finally. Ow. And I know that some of this may sound a little bit scary to prospective new LARPers because I have hit some heavy topics here, but don't worry. The vast majority of my experience with LARP has been so overwhelmingly positive and just full of friendship magic. And if you're in a healthy LARP community, your fellow LARPers and your staff members will work with you on the needs that you have if they do not get met. Just try to remember that most people who organize LARPs are volunteers, so let's everyone cut everyone else a little bit of slack and actively work to make the community better. For some, LARP is just a social activity that they enjoy with their friends, and for others it's an incredibly wonderful and rich emotional journey, and for others still, it's a form of therapy. No matter what you get out of LARP, it's definitely a more immersive form of entertainment than we as a society are used to, and that's why we need to talk about things like character bleed so that we can handle this level of immersion responsibly. But the immersion is what makes LARP such a unique and wonderful hobby, and that's probably why it's on the rise. So whatever LARP is to you, just remember the most important thing. Check it before you wreck it and drink water! Have fun. And now that this behemoth of an episode is finally over, I will leave you. Thank you so much for watching. We love you, we cherish you, and if you have any questions, comments, or emotional outbursts, please feel free to message us. We're on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you have business inquiries, you can message me here with this email, and you must CC my Lord and Savior Erica. Otherwise, it could very well just sit in the inbox and gather sparkly little glitter cobwebs. And thank you so much for liking us, subscribing to us, and fighting with us.
My voice. I am the frog princess.
I spent an inordinate amount of time practicing strange animal noises that are not attractive in any way.